The following is a local resident producers program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Access Television, the City of Oshkosh, the Oshkosh Cable Television Advisory Commission, or Time Warner Cable.
Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of Eye on Oshkosh. I'm Cheryl Hentz along with my guest co-host this week, Mr. Miles Maguire from Oshkosh Community News Network. Miles is here because Tony is in a play this evening as we tape this show, and I understand he's in a non-air conditioned facility doing this too, so you can be very grateful that you're here. But I appreciate your filling in for him.
Happy to be here.
And also we're very pleased to welcome to this edition of Eye on Oshkosh our guest. It's Michelle Pennewell. Michelle, in case you are unaware, is running as the one of two Republican candidates for the Winnebago County District Attorney position. The primary for that particular election is coming up on September 12th. She faces off with Christian Gossett, who we will be interviewing on a subsequent show, and the winner of the primary race will be facing off with Joe Mansky in the November 7th election. So that being said, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
We appreciate you being here. Why don't we start out, as we do with most political candidates, and you tell us and the viewers a little bit about who Michelle Pennewell is and why you're seeking the position of DA.
Sure. Well, I'm originally from Green Bay. I've been a Fox Valley resident almost my entire life. I went to undergrad at UW-Stevens Point, law school in Madison, and then I returned to the Valley after that. I worked in the Appleton area, first of all for the circuit court judges in Outagamie County as a law clerk, for the city of Appleton as an assistant city attorney, and then I joined the DA's office in Outagamie County. Following joining the Outagamie County DA's office, I subsequently transferred down to the Winnebago County DA's office, where I was for approximately 2.5 years before becoming the DA in Waushara County. I've been the DA in Waushara County for the past year.
Okay.
And so why I want to run for DA over here, I certainly enjoyed my time in Waushara County, but my ties are to the Fox Valley, and I think this is a situation where Winnebago County needs a good person with a long commitment to public service, good solid experience, prosecution experience, and I believe that I'm the right person at this time to get the office back on track, refocused on what it should be focused on, and that's the prosecution of criminals, service to victims of a crime, and protection of the public.
Do you think that's not what it is doing right now?
I think over the past few years, and certainly following the aftermath of Joe Paulus, the office has lost its focus a bit. I think that there are individuals in the office that may have allowed their own personal agendas to dictate their work in the office, and I think that the office needs to get back on track, get refocused on what's important, and that's service to the public. So I think it has been a problem over the past few years, and I think that if we can do that, we'll earn the public's respect back.
Can you maybe elaborate? I mean, I'm not asking for names. I'd
Sure.
love to know names, but I'm sure you wouldn't share them with us. So, but can you maybe elaborate a little bit on what you mean when you say some of their personal agendas or whatever sort of taking over?
Well, I think that when a person is distracted by perhaps a personal vendetta they have against somebody, and they spend their time pulling out files and looking up files, working on trying to further that personal agenda, and in exchange they don't follow through with their caseload, they're not keeping up with their cases. That is, those are some of the things that I personally saw in the DA's office, and I would certainly, as DA, ensure that that wasn't taking place and that we were focusing on doing our jobs.
Okay.
And I should say that there are a lot of good people in that office that I worked with that are very committed to doing their jobs and very committed to public service. And I think that everybody just really wants to get back on track.
Okay. So is there a lot of change that needs to be made, or is it more of an incremental thing? And what are some of the changes that you would institute?
I think that as seen by some recent problems in the office, there are some changes that need to be made. The office, in my opinion, is not completely broken. I don't think that it needs a complete overhaul. I think there are things that need to be tweaked. I think there are things that can be changed for the office to run better. And some of the things I would like to do include, one thing that I think is really important is that we're processing criminal cases in a timely manner. And that's one of the complaints that law enforcement has had over the past few years towards the DA's office, and even I heard those complaints when I was there. And I think we can do a better job of getting those cases through the system in a more timely manner, better serving victims of a crime, better serving law enforcement. And one of the areas I specifically saw that we could improve upon is sex offender registry violations. Those cases were coming in and they were being treated just like any other case. And certainly when we have a sex offender out in the community who's unaccounted for, we need to make sure that we get that charged out immediately, get a warrant in the system so that we can locate that person. So what I would do in that circumstance is, well, first of all, if there are problems with certain individuals, address those first, but if there's changes we can make to the system as a whole to get the cases pushed through more efficiently and in a more timely manner, I would certainly want to do that. Other things that I think could be focused on are better connections with community organizations. I think that some community organizations feel like it's difficult for them to have access to the DA's office. The Humane Association is one of them that I worked with in the past on cases who always struggled because they didn't have a go-to person in that office. That office currently has a program where law enforcement agencies have a go-to person, an assistant DA that they're assigned to address problems with, ask questions to, and they ask for that person when they call if that person's available. And I think it would be a good idea to expand that to certain community organizations that work frequently with the DA's office, including the Humane Association or various community groups. I know I was approached in my campaign by an individual in the Hmong community who hoped that their community could have better access to the DA's office. So I think through a liaison program where they have an individual they can contact and know a name to ask for when they contact the office, I think that would really improve communication between members of the public and the DA's office and increase access to the DA's office.
So are you suggesting then a creation of a new position for a go-to person, or just assign each individual prosecutor within the office a certain group, if you will, that they work with?
The second, not a new position, that we would have specific assistant DAs be assigned to various community groups, hopefully based upon interests that they have so that they keep in communication with those organizations. Or maybe it's, they have a dog and they have a particular affection for the Humane Society, then they're probably the person that would be the best go-to person. So first look at those, but then assign if necessary at that point.
Well, I think along kind of a related line then, Michelle, some people say that areas of specialization within the district attorney's office is a more effective and efficient way of running the office. And then others, and I can see both sides of this, others say, you don't want specialization. Specialization tends to drive up costs, and you really need to have people who are fluid, if you will, in all areas. Where do you stand on specialization or non-specialization?
Currently, the office has specialization in the areas of juvenile traffic and domestic violence. And I think that those areas are good for specialization. It's really important that domestic violence cases be handled in the same manner, be handled consistently from a case-to-case basis. And also that the prosecutor has a good working relationship with the Christine Ann Center, because it's really important in those types of cases to have an outside agency like Christine Ann to assist that prosecutor in performing their duties. And the same with traffic. It's a very specialized area, and juveniles as well. It's an entire statutory chapter that is completely different than the adult system. I believe that system works. As far as further specialization, I'm not for further specialization, I'm for further emphasis. For example, when I was in the office, in the DA's office here, I had what I would call an emphasis in child sexual assault cases. I handled a lot of the cases that came in, not all of them. But I would say, I don't know if I would say a majority, but a good percentage of the cases. And it allowed me to have specialized knowledge. It allowed me to create motions and different types of paperwork that would be filed in those cases. And really just to have a good knowledge of that area of the law. So I think emphasis is good. Now, if I was handling every child sexual assault case in the entire office, I think it would have been too difficult for me. I think my burnout, I think I would have burned out fast. And so I think that's one of the downsides to specialization, burnout. Now, the other problem is if I was handling all the sexual assault of child cases and I left the office like I did, nobody else would be able to take over and jump in with both feet and replace me and do what they needed to do on those cases and have that knowledge. So I think it's important to have a group of attorneys that have a wide range of knowledge, but it's also good to have those people that are especially knowledgeable in certain areas. And it was the same for DNA cases. I handled the DNA cases, and that was another specialty area for me. And then the other prosecutors could look to me as a resource, and that's pretty much how the office worked. Some people would have a little bit more of an emphasis in property crimes. And I like the idea of an emphasis, but I think that specialization is the problem. I think that another problem with it could be if you have an employee that isn't as efficient as other employees, now you have a whole area of the law that's not being handled maybe as efficiently as could be. So I think that there are a number of problems with it. I'm for more of an emphasis type system as opposed to specialization or complete specialization.
Okay. When you talk about making these kinds of changes, and whether they're big changes or little changes, a lot of it has to do with your ability as a manager, as a leader. Can you tell us a little bit about how you see your management style and how you would go about affecting change in the office?
I think that my employees, at least the ones that work under me now, would say that I lead by example. I'm a hard worker, and I really dedicate myself to my job. And I think that that's important. I think that is first and foremost. Your employees look to you to see that you're there every day when they're there, and you're on the front lines, and you're prosecuting the cases just like they are. And maybe I'm handling the more serious matters, or maybe there's somebody helping me handle the serious matters. But leading by example, I think, is really important. So that's the first thing that I would do to ensure that the office gets back on the right track. I think it's important to be positive and positively reinforce people. You certainly address issues when they need to be addressed, and I would do that. I think that I really, I have a good working relationship with the people in the office now. Half of the assistant DAs, with the exception of my opponent and of course the DA who won't be there anymore, are on my list of supporters. They support me, they worked with me, they know my work, and I think they have confidence that I can lead the office forward and out of this time period where it's criticized by the public and maybe doesn't have the respect of the public that it should or we would all want it to have. So that's really what I would do to try to get it on the right track.
Okay. You're running as a Republican, as we said in the outset. You were appointed to your current position by a Democratic governor. You've made campaign contributions to a Democratic governor. Certainly it's not the first time someone has jumped political ships, and I'm sure it won't be the last. But can you maybe enlighten us as to why you've jumped ships as you have?
Well, first of all, I, in my opinion, I haven't jumped ship. I've never been a member of the Democratic Party. I had never met Governor Doyle or contributed to him prior to receiving the appointment. My contribution to Governor Doyle was $50, and it was following the appointment the same week of the appointment, actually, when I went to personally thank him at a fundraiser at an individual's home. I've also donated to Republican candidates, including Vince Biskupic. I believe I donated to John Jorgensen, but I have to double check my checkbook on that. I've donated to Mark Green. When I got the appointment in Oshkosh County, within a week or two of getting the appointment, I had joined the Republican Party over there, was part of the display at the county fair. When I met with Governor Doyle and I met with his staff for the appointment, the issue of my political affiliation was never asked. And I never offered because, in my opinion, the manner in which the appointment was done, it appeared to me as though he was looking for the best person for Waushara County, and I believe I received the appointment because I was the best person for Waushara County. I also went over there and I met the DA and I met the sheriff, who are both Republicans, and I worked to earn their respect and their confidence in me so that they also were in support of me receiving the appointment as well. So I believe it was an appointment based on merits, not based on political affiliation, and I understand that that's atypical, but in a county the size of Waushara County, I don't know that it is necessarily a county where a governor feels as though they need to make a point and appoint somebody of their same party. I think he was really just looking out for the best interest of the county at that point.
Well, this isn't a campaign issue. I guess I'm just kind of curious what your mindset is on this, Michelle. Do you think that, all of these positions are partisan type positions, sheriff and DA and what have you. Do you think that they should be partisan positions? I mean, because everybody, I think, deserves a fair shot under the law. And, that's not to say that they're not getting it, but, it kind of makes a person sit back and scratch their head and wonder why these are partisan positions in the first place. What are your thoughts on that?
I echo your thoughts on that. As far as a prosecutor is concerned, or a DA, we have very little impact on any type of policy that's created, obviously, by the legislature. And so, as far as controversial topics of Republican versus Democrat, we don't really have any bearing on that. We follow the law, and we take an oath to follow the law. But I think that being a Republican or being a Democrat doesn't have a whole lot to do with how you prosecute cases. And I think that, I've heard people comment about, oh, you jumped ship, but I think if you look at my record, I have a record of being a very tough prosecutor, fair but tough, and some people might view that as being more Republican in nature. I don't know. I guess I don't see how being a Republican or being a Democrat has a lot to do with being a DA and treating people fairly and seeking justice.
Okay.
You often hear people say that there's too much politics in the DA's office, and I'm curious, what does that phrase mean to you, and do you agree with it, and if so, what would you do about it?
Well, I think to an extent there are politics in the office, but I guess it's what I was referring to earlier, where you have people who may be more concerned with their personal agendas than performing their job duties. And that is, I guess, what I would refer to as politics in the office. I think as a DA and as a staff that works under the DA, we need to be focused on serving the public and doing what's in the best interest of the public, and try at all times to put our own personal agendas and our own political agendas aside. And certainly that's difficult because a DA has to run for office, and in this case, until next term every 2 years. So, I think most DAs are kind of keeping their eye on the ball and knowing that I could have an opponent and I could have to start to run again in another year right after being elected. So I think that you have to have a person in there that's committed to doing the right thing, and I think I am that person, and my record has shown that. And in Waushara County, I went over there with the notion that I believed that I might run for office over there. I really wasn't sure. I wanted to get over there and see what I thought about it and how I adjusted to the community, since the Fox Valley was really my home. And I think I made decisions not looking over my shoulder, wondering whether or not I was going to be elected again. I made decisions because they were the right thing to do. And law enforcement has respected me for that. And I have the support of law enforcement over there running over here because of that. So I think that's how you get politics out of the office. You try to do the right thing, and you try to put all of that other stuff aside and do your job and serve the public.
Okay. You had listed at the outset, some of the positions that you've held. In 7 years, you've held a number of positions, 5, I think, or 6.
Right.
I think it's 5.
5.
Some people would look at that and say, she's working her way up the career ladder. Others would look at that and say, she's a job hopper, she's a career hopper. And now you're looking to come back to this area as our district attorney in Winnebago County. How would you respond to folks who have a negative connotation about your jobs?
Well, for the past 6 years, I've been a prosecutor, and that's always where my interest lied. I interned in the Outagamie County DA's office was when I was in law school. And when I got out of law school, what I really wanted to be was a criminal prosecutor. At that time, the jobs were few and far between. I also wanted to return to the Valley because that's where my ties were. I was given the opportunity to be a law clerk for the circuit court judges in Outagamie County. That's a one-year position. So when my year was up, that's when I went to work for the city of Appleton. At that time, there were no jobs still in DA's offices in this area. And so I took what I considered to be a very, very good job at that time, being a prosecutor of traffic and ordinance violations for the city of Appleton, and also providing legal advice to the Appleton Police Department. All again tied in with things that I was interested in, an area of law that I was interested in. Once I had the opportunity to go over to the DA's office in Outagamie, that's when I took advantage of that opportunity. I was in that office, and I was in that office until February of '03. Now that office suffered some of the same problems that we saw down here in Winnebago County during an election that took place in that November when we had Bill Lennon, Joe Paulus, and Ed Jelinski running. We had two people that were in the office that were running against each other. And it was a situation where I felt like it was better for me when actually Bill Lennon approached me and offered me the job. And up until that point, I hadn't really considered leaving. But at that point, I had heard a lot of good things about the court system down here. There were still some hard feelings in that office about the election that had taken place. Actually, at the time I left, there were 6 other assistants, 7 of us that left total. It was just a difficult time, and I think there were some, feelings that people carried with them. And I had the opportunity to keep doing what I wanted to do in another setting, and in this case, in what people describe to be a more efficiently run court system, allowing you to have more time working on your cases so that you could be better prepared for court. And I certainly saw that as being an advantage. When I came down here, that's exactly what I saw. The system, the court system itself, the way it was set up, was running efficiently. I had more time to work on my cases. I could file more motions. I felt like I was a more effective prosecutor, prepare my witnesses better for trial. And when the Waushara County DA position came open, again, I saw it as an opportunity to move up on the ladder, and I thought I would be a good person for Waushara County. There was nobody locally that was interested in the job, and I felt like I was the right person to come in there and replace Guy Dutcher, who had a wonderful reputation, had been there for 12 years, and so I thought this would be a good opportunity for me to move up. Now, as far as coming back here, it's been a situation where obviously I've seen the DA's office struggle. I think that the DA's office here needs a good leader who's going to get the office back on track. I believe I'm the right person to do that. And as I said before, additionally, my ties lie more to this particular area, and I'm committed to coming back to the Valley and serving the public here.
One of the ideas that has been proposed recently in the city here is the idea of a municipal court for the city of Oshkosh. I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts about that idea.
Sure. Well, when I worked in the city of Appleton, we did not have a municipal court. I handled all my cases in the circuit court. And there were other municipalities, and obviously I deal with the same thing in Waushara, that have a municipal court. Most of them actually in Waushara bring their matters through circuit court. A DA, whether or not there's a municipal court doesn't have a whole lot of effect on the DA in this particular county because Wally Bush prosecutes all the cases for the city of Oshkosh, so it certainly wouldn't add a lot more to the volume. As for whether or not I think it's a good idea, I know that it's difficult for a city to get it started. I think if you talk with cities or municipalities that have done it, they're happy once they have it going, but it's difficult to get it started because they need a facility, they need full-time staff, and just getting it off the ground is difficult. Certainly it benefits cities financially to have one, but I know a lot of cities are discouraged from doing it just because it's difficult to get it up and running. So as far as me as DA, it doesn't affect me a whole lot, but I can sympathize with the city of Oshkosh if they feel like it's a little difficult to get something like this up and running. But I have heard from municipalities that once they do, they're satisfied with the results.
Let me ask you more of a personal question. You said you've always wanted to be a prosecutor. Where does that come from?
Really long time ago, actually. When I was in high school, and I think I was a senior in high school actually, I had a class that was called Law and Society, and we went to municipal court and we watched municipal court and we toured a police department, and talk. We had a DA come in and talk. And I was quite fascinated by the criminal justice system, found that I was very interested in it, thought that I might either want to be a police officer or a district attorney. When I went to undergrad, I went to undergrad with the notion that I would go to law school after undergrad. I interned in a DA's office, in the Portage County DA's office when I was in undergrad, and I enjoyed that as well, and I was actually able to draft criminal complaints, and I'm sure they probably weren't the greatest criminal complaints because I didn't have a whole lot of knowledge in the law at that point. But it was, my interest has lied there for so long that it's hard for me to even know why exactly, but it's something that I've just always been very interested in. And I have a long history even in undergrad of sort of public service. I was a resident assistant in the residence halls, and I was very active in the campus community. And so I like serving the public, and I find criminal law to be a very interesting area.
Let's talk about something that probably isn't real comfortable for you, and ordinarily I wouldn't even go into someone's personal life because it's just that it's personal. But in this particular case, I do think it is relevant. You are involved romantically with Assistant DA Doran Viste. And someone had said you were engaged to him, but I'm not sure if that's the case.
That's
you are
accurate.
engaged. Okay. So you're engaged to an Assistant DA in the very office where you seek to be the leader of that office. If you were elected, Michelle, how would, I mean, I can see where that would have politics of its own.
Sure.
How would that relationship affect your work, and how would your work affect that relationship? It would be very hard, I would think, because he would be a subordinate of yours.
I certainly understand where people might have concerns about that. Before I ever even announced that I was running for office, I contacted the State Department of Administration. They indicated that there was nothing to prohibit that, given that he was already an employee, and he's a non-probationary union employee. They suggested that I contact the Ethics Board to ensure that there were no issues there. I did, and I talked to an attorney at the Ethics Board. He said, because he's already an employee, as long as my deputy DA deals with any personnel issues involving him, then there would not be any problems with that. So that's what I intend to do, have a deputy DA that deals with the personnel issues involving him. And I think that, I think it's very doable. He has a reputation of being a good employee. We had a relationship before I even left that office, and we're very professional, and I think the people in the office would agree that, you know, a lot of people in the office didn't even realize it because we handled it so professionally. We did our jobs and kept our personal lives separate. So I feel like I've done all the steps necessary to ensure that, number one, it's okay with the state and I'm not doing anything illegal or unethical, but also I will certainly, if elected, put all of those procedures in place to ensure that the deputy is the one that is dealing with the personnel issues. I think in an office such as this, it's a little bit different than other offices because you have people who are union employees, and at any time if any of them feel like they're being treated unfairly, they can certainly go to the union, and if he ever felt like I was treating him unfairly, he could go to the union. And in fact, when I get there, I would assume that there won't even be any probationary employees. Everyone would be off of probation and permanent. So there certainly are mechanisms in place. And at any time, if someone feels like I'm treating anyone else, you know, giving anyone else special treatment, they certainly would have that recourse as well to go to the union. So I can certainly understand where you know, it's a fair issue to bring up, but I believe that I've done everything I need to make sure that it will not be a problem, and I certainly will immediately put that procedure in place where the deputy DA is dealing with any personnel issues. The other point I should make is that, well, although raises are almost unheard of for assistant DAs, there aren't, at this point, there's not a mechanism for any kind of a merit raise. It's all steps that are all set through negotiations with the state and the union. So there, even though I would have the deputy make those decisions, it's kind of moot because they don't get raises and they don't get merit raises. So,
speaking of the deputy DA, currently John Jorgensen is that person, and he has been for a number of years, even under Joe Paulus.
Sure.
If you were elected, would you continue that with him being the deputy DA, or would you perhaps look at somebody else? And along with that, would Bill Lennon work in the office?
No, I did have a conversation with Mr. Lennon when he announced that he was not going to seek election. He believed that I would be a candidate that, or somebody that might be interested in running and would be a solid candidate because he knows my work firsthand. I've not had any conversations with anyone about being the deputy. Well, let me back up. I never had a conversation where I promised Bill Lennon that I would hire him or promised him he would be the deputy. That's not my intent. And in fact, I don't think that Bill would feel comfortable working in that office anymore. I think Bill wants to move forward. I have not had any conversations with anyone else about being the deputy. And my decision of who would be the deputy will be largely dependent on whether there are any vacancies in the office. Now, assuming I get elected, there may not be any vacancies in the office. If anyone chooses to leave, around the time of the election, then there would be a vacancy in the office that I would have to fill. At that point, I would seriously consider bringing somebody in from the outside, an experienced prosecutor, perhaps somebody who's even been a deputy in another county, because I think that it's not a bad idea for us to get some change and get a clean slate when we're moving things in a different direction. So that's something that I would seriously consider and would be, almost my hope that I would have that option at least. If that's not an option, then I would take a look at all of the other people in the office and make an assessment over who would be the best person to lead the office in the direction that I want it to go.
Just one more question on the
Sure.
size of the office, and then I'll give Miles a shot here. Do you like the size of the office right now as it is? Do you think it's too large, too small, or just right?
Every DA's office in the whole state is understaffed. Every ADA works hard, and they work hard to keep up with their cases. And I did when I was here. And I think that the workload does require the assistants to work hard. But I think that right now, the way it is, there are enough assistants. Like I said, every DA's office is understaffed. So for us to whine that we're more understaffed than any other county is probably not fair. Everybody works hard, and everybody's about that understaffed, almost by the same percentage. So I think that at this point in time, it just requires people to work hard and keep focused to keep up with their caseload. Whether we're overstaffed, I would say no. The numbers do not support that there are more ADAs than necessary in this county. And so I think we can get the work done with the 10 people, including the DA, that we have over there. Support staff has been a struggle. They lost a position and perhaps face the challenge of maybe losing another one this next budget cycle. So that is where I think the DA's office is really going to be hurt the most, and we'll have to really look at prioritizing and figuring out ways to deal with the loss of another person if necessary.
Okay. Let's talk about Joe Paulus.
Okay. Everybody wants to talk about him this week.
And actually more sort of the after effects of Joe
Sure.
Paulus. So that scandal obviously shook a lot of people's confidence in the administration of justice in Winnebago County. What level of confidence should the average citizen have today, and what will you do to, I assume that's a fairly low level, or lower than it might be, what will be some of the tangible things that you can do to actually make people feel that things are back on track?
It's difficult because I certainly think that the public has reason to feel some distrust in the system, and I understand that. But I think that we are back on track. I think we're moving in the right direction. I think the number of years that have passed between Joe Paulus leaving office and where we are today, there's been a move in the right direction to earn the public's trust back. Now, there have been problems recently, and those have been addressed in the media. But what I would do, I guess my belief is that I have a long commitment to public service, and I believe that if somebody is a strong public servant, shows the public that they want this job for the right reasons, not for their own personal gain, obviously not to put money in their own pocket, I think that is a huge step in earning the public's respect back. I think a leader who holds their staff accountable and holds their staff to that same level of commitment to public service is another big step in earning back the public's trust. I think allowing the office to be as open as possible, open records issues. I actually worked when I worked at the city of Appleton, that's something that I dealt with on a regular basis. I was the person who made those decisions for the city of Appleton Police Department over what would be released and what we could release. I'm very conscientious about that. I think we need to follow the open records law. It allows the media and the public have trust when they know they have access to these documents. I would make case disposition sheets available to the public. They would be subject to open records and even try to set up a mechanism where they can be easily accessible in a file for people to peruse through. I think these are all steps in the right direction. Making the office no longer a mystery, keep it open to the public, let the public understand that the DA is committed to serving them, welcomes the opportunity for them to bring any issues before her, if it's me, and her staff.
Okay.
Good.
Your website says that you have successfully handled 3 life imprisonment jury trials, that you've put 2 multiple-time sex offenders in prison for life, and that you've had significant jury trial experience in all areas of the law and more than 3 times the jury trial experience as Christian Gossett, who is the Republican candidate running against you. How many trials have you actually had?
To a verdict, 34.
Yes.
Okay. I only count the ones that actually go to a verdict. Sometimes there's fuzzy math, but I actually only count the ones that go all the way to a verdict.
You're not counting plea bargains.
No, and I'm not counting those
Well, that could
cases.
drive up a conviction rate real fast.
And I'm not counting those cases either where in the middle of trial something goes awry and it's a mistrial, or in the middle of trial maybe a witness didn't turn out to be as good as you thought they were and you end up settling the case, or maybe the witness is better than you thought they would be and the defense wants to settle the case. No, I mean that's to a verdict, 34 trials, and that is accurate in all areas of the law. Traffic, drug cases, batteries, sexual assaults of adults and children, 1 first-degree intentional homicide case, and felony jury trial experience in, I believe, all of those areas as well.
Of those 34 then, Michelle, how many have you won?
To be honest with you, I'm not sure.
You're not sure, okay.
I would say about 60%. I don't consider whether or not I've been successful in prosecuting somebody to be the primary factor. I look at justice. The jury system that we have is the best way that we can hold criminals accountable, but also ensure that the people who are innocent receive their fair day in court and that justice is served. So I guess, to be honest with you, I would have to double check, because it's not something I keep that close a track of, because I mean, believe it or not, I don't consider it to be the most important thing. The most important thing, I think, is that justice is served. And if justice means that the person is found not guilty because I haven't met my burden of proof, then justice has been served. In the cases, the 3 life imprisonment cases you refer to, I believe justice was served in those cases because I believe I met my burden of proof, and those people were very dangerous criminals to our society. But certainly a prosecutor feels a little pain when they go home at the end of the day when they lose a jury trial, but I don't consider that to be, winning a jury trial to be the most important thing in the jobs that we do.
Okay. Do you think it's more important for a DA to be a good prosecutor, or is it more important for them to lead and manage a team of good prosecutors?
Both. I think a DA needs to be both. And
50-50?
As far as allotting time, I'm not sure. I think what a DA needs to be able to do is have the ability to prosecute the county's most serious criminals. And I think the public expects that. They want a DA who's not only going to sit over in the office and manage the office, but they're going to get over in the courtroom and they're going to hold our most serious criminals accountable. And I believe I am that person. But I think that the DA also needs to be a strong manager. And I think that I've demonstrated that I can be both of those things based upon my record. But I think it needs to be a combination of both. I think the public is disappointed when they see that the DA isn't over in the courthouse also prosecuting the most serious criminals in addition to just running the office.
I agree. Do you think that the Winnebago County DA's office has any fat in its budget? And if so, what would you do to make it more lean?
Gosh, when I was there, I honestly didn't see a whole lot of fat. And I know since I've left, they've lost an administrative position, which certainly has hurt them. And if they lose another, it will hurt even more. When I was there, in the olden days, before I started in that office, I heard stories of prosecutors going to fancy conferences in California and Florida and whatnot. Those days were gone when I was there, and those days never existed when I was in Outagamie County. What we did instead is we looked for free training seminars to send the prosecutors to, and we found them. And the federal government sponsors free training in South Carolina for local prosecutors, and it's excellent training. So that was one area where we had already cut out a lot of the fat, and there basically was no budget that was being spent on training. I know that that's one of the areas that I think Bill did work hard to focus on, is cutting the fat when he first got there. And I felt like, for the most part, the whole time I was there, we were working hard, and I didn't really see any excess spending. We certainly never hired experts on cases when we didn't feel it was absolutely necessary. We would try to bring experts in that were of no cost if we could, domestic abuse experts that maybe worked for the Christine Ann Center versus hiring one. I know I was always very cautious when I would spend money in my prosecutions. In fact, I worked while I was in the office to bring technology into the office through LCD projectors. We call them Elmos, but they're document cameras, and I actually found them used in auctions for us to be able to have those items and use them in court. So my belief is that everyone is pretty conscientious, and I don't see a whole lot of fat. Now, I never saw the budget either, and I never worked on their budget firsthand. Of course, I did in Waushara County, but just from a first-hand daily basis, I didn't see a lot of excessive spending.
Okay, all right.
When we talk about crime in this area, I mean, by national standards, it's relatively low, but there is still nonetheless crime. What do you think the priorities should be in terms of law enforcement? I mean, are there either kinds of crime that you think your office should go, or the office should go against more, or are there perhaps things that are over the horizon that haven't arrived here yet but may be coming that we should be watching for?
I think the one thing, and I think that the MEG unit has done a good job of keeping their eye on this, is prescription drug addiction and the crimes that are associated with it. One of the things that I saw when I was over here, and I see a whole lot in Waushara County, is crimes being committed by people that would not otherwise commit crimes because they have a prescription drug addiction. And we saw it in the city of Oshkosh, where we saw robberies at Walgreens for Oxycontin. And it's quite shocking to have somebody who is a professional and they're maybe in their 40s and they're being brought into the criminal justice system for the first time because they've stole money from somebody, or they've stole prescription drugs from somebody because of this addiction. And so it's not only the addiction itself and the illegal nature of the possession and maybe the sale or the acquiring of the drug itself, but it's also the crimes that they're committing to get the drugs. So I think that that's an area that we need to be concerned about, because it's a whole new area that we haven't really dealt with before. And like I said, I noticed that in Waushara County. In that area of the state, there's a whole lot of talk about methamphetamine. And there's some talk over here. Over there, it's a little bit more prevalent because it's a farming community, and the anhydrous ammonia is often stolen from the farmers over there. So I've dealt with it more in that capacity over there, but they're terrified for meth to hit that community, and certainly I understand why somebody would be really concerned about having meth hit that community or any community, but one concern we really need to be looking at is prescription drug addiction and how that's affected our community, and focus in on that somewhat. As far as other crimes, I think you can't pick one certain area and say it's any more important than the other, but that's just an area that I really see on the rise, and I find it to be a little unusual when you have people who now are entering into the criminal justice system that we wouldn't otherwise expect to do so.
Okay. I want to go back to something that you had mentioned earlier, and then we want to talk a little bit in our remaining time about your goals and so forth. You had mentioned that everyone in the office, in the Winnebago County DA's office, other than Christian Gossett, who's running against you, and Bill Lennon, who's leaving, are supporting you. Now, if you're elected, obviously Christian Gossett is still there. How will that working relationship be affected by a campaign that hopefully won't get ugly, but might. Sometimes these things do.
Sure. Let me just clarify. I said half of the attorneys, other than
half.
Christian. Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And the others have, as far as I know, have not signed on with either one
Okay.
as public endorsers. But I certainly want to clarify that because I wouldn't
Okay.
want
Okay.
any misconception there. No, I'm referring to 4 attorneys
Okay.
out of the 8. And like I said, the others I don't believe have publicly supported either individual and have indicated they like to remain out of it. One thing that I think if you talk to people who have known me for a while or who have worked with me, one thing I think they would say about me is that I'm a bridge builder and I'm not a grudge holder. And I've had people do really nasty things to me in the past, or even say hurtful things or whatever. But I am not the kind of person who holds grudges. If Mr. Gossett wants to remain in the office, I certainly would treat him with the respect that he deserves. He's a good prosecutor. My belief is that I'm the person that's more qualified for the position because of my record and my experience. But I'm not saying that he's not a good prosecutor by any means, and I think that I would welcome that if he wanted to stay in the office and remain working with me.
Okay. I pulled some things off your website and want to have you, take a moment or two to talk about those. One of the things, as a goal, it says that as a district attorney in Winnebago County, you will work to ensure the office is accessible to the public and community organizations by creating a liaison program between the attorneys in the office and various community organizations. We talked about that.
Right.
You also want to better utilize the Winnebago County Conflict Resolution Center to assist in making victims of crime whole through victim offender conferencing, as well as obtaining restitution for victims of crime. Now, when I think of the Conflict Resolution Center, I think of it primarily as civil type things, a lot of small claims court type stuff, and interpersonal relationships between roommates or landlords and tenants, what have
Sure.
you. I've not really seen it being used a whole lot in criminal cases. How would you go about establishing something like that? Because I think that aren't they funded through the county, and do they have the funding to be able to take on additional responsibilities related to criminal cases?
Actually, I've spoken with people that are involved and work for the Conflict Resolution Center, and they would love the opportunity to work more closely with the DA's office and coordinate some of this victim offender conferencing. And actually, in talking with them, that's when I first realized that we had this available to us as prosecutors as part of resolution to cases, because it was something that was so underutilized when I was in the DA's office that I knew it existed, but I guess I hadn't even realized that it was a tool that we could use. And when I learned that I was excited, because when I worked in Outagamie County, we had a grant, a restorative justice grant, and we had a program that was just starting there. And this program's been in place for a long time. We had a program that was just starting there where we could do victim offender conferencing. We could do some of these things that we would now be able to do through the Conflict Resolution Center here. And it was very successful in some of the cases that I handled. I handled a case where a man had been severely injured in an automobile accident. A car hit a motorcycle, and the motorcyclist was severely injured. He went through months and months of therapy, learning how to walk again, learning how to talk again, read, just really relearning everything from scratch. And the driver of the automobile, marijuana was found in the car. A low level of marijuana was found in his blood. There would have potentially been some problems if I had to go to trial on the case. I was able to reach a resolution where the victim was very satisfied because the defendant agreed. As part of the probation and the resolution in the case, the defendant agreed to go with the victim to the hospital, where he spent months and months and months of rehabilitation so he could understand the impact that his behavior had had on this particular victim. And it was unbelievably successful. I think it's great if we have a resource like that here that we can use. It's not going to be appropriate in every case. You're certainly not going to have a sex offender meeting with their victim and, let's all hold hands
Let's
at the
hope
end of the
not.
day.
They've already met.
Right. But in cases like that, it made the victim feel so much better, and I think it went a long way in making sure that that defendant thought about his actions, before he did something like this again.
Do they have the funds available? Because, I mean, if on any given day you can go down to room 60 in the lower level of the courthouse and see the numbers, I mean, it's just huge, the volume of cases that these people are trying to resolve instead of going actually to a trial. So you think that they can easily take that on from a time standpoint as well as from a monetary or financial standpoint?
That's my understanding in speaking with them. They feel as though they're underutilized by the DA's office. They welcome the opportunity to work with the office more often.
Another thing is you want to continue to promote and build upon current alternatives to incarceration, such as our new drug court program that just went into effect January 1st here. What are some other ideas that you have for alternatives?
One idea, and I think I actually even listed it separately on my goal sheet as well, is better utilization of deferred prosecution agreements post-plea, where somebody goes to court, they actually enter a plea to the charge, there's they withhold a finding of guilt, and the person enters into an agreement saying they're going to do certain things, and if they follow through with those things, then their case would be reduced at the end, dismissed, maybe there would be a fine, but they would go to counseling, follow through with anything that we believe is appropriate in that particular case. And I think that is a good mechanism that is being underutilized here. We used it a lot in Outagamie County, and I really believe the reason that we didn't utilize it here as much in Winnebago is because we did not have a very effective mechanism in place for ensuring compliance with the agreements. So I think what would need to be set up first is a mechanism within the office to ensure that we're following through and making sure those people are complying with the agreements, and once we do, utilizing those as an alternative to incarceration.
And what's the advantage of that? What do we get out of that?
Well, number one, it might keep some people out of jail. Number two, it might prevent some people from having a felony conviction if they follow through with certain things and we're able to amend it to a misdemeanor at the end. And the benefit to society with people not having a felony conviction is obviously a felony conviction seriously affects people's employment. It affects people's civil rights. And I think in some circumstances, when you have a first-time offender and you have a crime of a less serious nature, it is appropriate to consider the effect on society of another individual walking around with a felony conviction. So I think that those are some benefits. It also, in cases where maybe there are proof problems, it gives us another alternative to resolve the case and not have as many cases unnecessarily going to trial, which certainly helps the efficiency of the justice system altogether.
Okay. And just one other thing that I pulled off your website, one of the things that you want to do, Michelle, is bring additional technology into the courtroom and the DA's office in an effort to handle cases in a more efficient and effective manner. Can you maybe give us a couple examples of ways in which you would envision greater technology and how that translates into greater efficiency and effectiveness?
Well, one of the things that I actually did in Oshkosh County is I brought in their first electronic case management system. When I got there, I was shocked actually to find out that everything was in binders and we had no way of looking up cases on the computer at all other than CCAP. I contacted the state. I had them install a program, and it was a long process for us converting our whole system to an electronic nature. So we already have that in Winnebago County. So I certainly wouldn't install that same system here, but continue to utilize and update systems such as that. As far as technology, I guess what I was specifically referring to is technology also in the courtroom. I think that's really important in being effective. When I attend trainings out in South Carolina that are put on by the Department of Justice and by the federal government, one of the things they tell us is utilize technology in the courtroom. It's very effective in efficiently presenting your cases, so you spend less time handing things to the jury and having them pass it from person to person while you're in the midst of a jury trial. You can put it up on a screen, you can have it on the computer, pop it up. It makes the whole system more efficient. In fact, I tried a case up in Outagamie County with an assistant who's now here, Kathy Huber, and she had something like 120 exhibits in her case. It was a property crime. And that was when I was first getting involved in this, and we used an Elmo. I actually went out to Fox Valley Tech, borrowed it from them because we didn't have that, borrowed the projector, and we were able to try a case that normally would have took 2 days or 3 days in a much shorter period of time because we could more efficiently present the evidence to the jury. So those are things that I would continue to build on, continue to obtain that technology according to what our budget allows, and as I indicated before, some of that can be obtained used, and I would always look at that option. I'm a big rummage sale shopper myself, and I think that sometimes other people's junk is another person's treasure. So I would certainly do that if we had that opportunity to continue to bring some of that used technology into the office to be more efficient, both in the office, but I guess I'm more referring to in the courtroom, more effective in the courtroom when we present our cases, so we're not wasting the citizens' time either when they sit on the jury.
Okay. Do you have a kind of a short question?
No, I don't actually.
This could be the longest 2.5 minutes of television history.
Well, we've talked a little bit about sentencing, and I guess this is an unfair question, but I'll ask it anyway. The other piece of the criminal justice pie here, of course, is the judges.
Sure.
Tell us about your opinion of the Winnebago County judges.
Well, I think that they have a very good system in place. As I indicated, one of the reasons that I was enthusiastic about coming down here is because of the efficiency of the system. And all of them have worked really hard to get the system in place where we have, rotating, the cases rotate from judge to judge, depending on which month it is, and they have a whole cycle that they follow. And I think that keeps the system very efficient, both for them and for the DA's office. The judges here, my experience has been, they've been professional. I've had good relationships with them. Very quality judges that follow the law. So I think, my experience here was a good one. I certainly didn't leave Winnebago County because I didn't like working here or didn't think the system was a good system. So my experience has been positive.
Okay, good. Why don't you take about 45 seconds or so, Michelle, look right into camera 3 there, and tell voters in Winnebago County why they should go to the polls on Tuesday, September 12th, and vote for you.
Sure. As I stated throughout my campaign, my objective is to put public service over politics. That is what my record shows. I'm a person that's been committed to serving the Fox Valley over the past 7 years, 6 years as a prosecutor in the Fox Valley. I've had a long history of successfully prosecuting criminals, but also of serving the public in this area and protecting the public from serious criminals. I'm currently the Waushara County DA. I'm the only candidate that's actually been a district attorney, the only candidate that's worked with the county board in developing a budget and following through with my budget. I returned a budget surplus to Waushara County last year, and I hope to come back to Winnebago County, bring that experience that I've gained in Waushara County, and also the experiences that I've had throughout the past 7 years in the Fox Valley, and lead the office forward and refocus it on what's important, and that is serving victims of a crime, prosecuting criminals, and protecting our public.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. And if you get through the primary, then we'll have you back, and we'll actually have you face off with whoever you're going to run against, which is, in this case, it's the only one Democratic candidate. It's Mr. Joe Mansky. So,
Sure.
But good luck on September 12th.
Well, and thank you for having me.
And if you don't know where to vote, contact, well, actually, Michelle's got a link on her
I
website.
do.
You can contact the city clerk, or you can contact your county clerk. Thanks very much for joining us. Thanks to Miles, and we'll see you next time. Until then, take good care and keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.